Friends, welcome back to this third lecture on the inflation. So in the first lecture, we discussed the meaning of inflation. In the second lecture, we discussed the different causes, which include the demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, and then finally the structural deficit. Now in this lecture, we will discuss the different types of inflation. So the inflation can be categorized into four different categories. What are those categories? So the first category is based upon speed of inflation. The second category is based upon volatility of inflation. The third category is based upon the government intervention, and the fourth category is based upon the causes of inflation, right? So first of all, depending upon the speed of inflation, so the rate of inflation, the rate of rise in the price can be very slow, medium, and very fast also. So based upon that, the first category is creeping inflation. Creeping, the word creeping itself shows that it is creeping, regna, right? Going on toes. So when the rate of inflation is less than or equal to 3% year on year, then it is called creeping inflation. And friends, this inflation is considered very safe and essential. But why this is considered as very safe and essential? And what is the meaning of safe and essential? The essential here means that this is essential for the economic growth. That means it is desirable. If the inflation is 0%, it is not the desirable situation. Rather, it should be in the range of 2% to 4%, average 3%. It is desirable for the appropriate economic growth rate. And here comes the relationship between the economic growth rate and the inflation. So the inflation and economic growth rate have a direct relationship in the short term. So can I show you how it is? So when there is inflation, that means the prices are rising. That means the producer of goods, they will get more profit. So profits will increase. When they increase the profit, then they reinvest that profit into the further production. So the production increases. When the production increases, then the jobs increases. The people get more employment. And when jobs increases, then the income of the people increases. And when income of the people increases, then it is nothing but the economic growth. So there is the direct relationship between the economic growth and inflation. So for economic growth to happen, certain minimum essential the inflation rate is required, and that is 3%. However, in the long term, if this inflation remains high, then it is not good for the economic growth, because it will actually adversely impact the large number of people. But what can be the adverse impacts? It can have adverse impact on the exports, it can have adverse impacts on the saving rates, and so on. We will see the adverse impact separately. So in the long term, if the inflation rate remains very high, not in the safe zone, then it is bad. So in the safe zone, it is good. Therefore, this creeping inflation is supposed to be safe and essential. And even if you see in India, the Reserve Bank of India has the Monetary Policy Committee. In this Monetary Policy Committee, there is inflation targeting. So the inflation targeting has a range of 2%, sorry, 4% plus minus 2%. So the range of 2% to 6% is considered to be a safe range or appropriate range, right? So first was the creeping inflation. The second category is the walking inflation. So after creeping, there is walking inflation. So walking inflation is when the inflation is approximately 10% year on year, right? So is this safe? It is not safe. It is a signal that there is dangerous zone. So it is a kind of warning signal, right? And in India, this has happened many times. When this happens, the government and the Reserve Bank of India, they take suitable administrative and the monetary policy measures. The third category is, third category is the running inflation. Running inflation means when the inflation is more than 10% and up to approximately 20%. So this running inflation is very adverse. It eats away the savings of the people. It adversely impacts the poor people. It adversely impacts the exports of the country. It adversely impacts the government finances because the government has to give more subsidy so that people have certain minimum essential services. And the highest and the most adverse is the hyperinflation or galloping inflation, and that means the inflation is between the range of 20% to 100%. This kind of inflation is the most adverse inflation. This is the inflation which will absolutely collapse the entire economy, right? So this inflation is the most dangerous kind of inflation. So this was all about the inflation based upon the speed. Now the second category is the inflation based upon the volatility. So based upon the volatility, the first category is the headline inflation. So headline inflation is the inflation which considers all goods and services in the country. So it measures the rate of change in the price of goods across the goods and services, right? It does not exclude any. It is also called as the total inflation, right? And why this is called total inflation? Because it includes all the goods and services. Headline inflation, why this is called headline inflation? Because in the newspapers, this is the primary inflation which is reported. This is the primary inflation which is considered for the policy making and all other purposes, right? So this is called headline inflation and the total inflation both. In India, earlier it was calculated based upon WPI, and now it is also calculated based upon CPI, Consumer Price Index. So WPI considers all goods but not the services. CPI considers all the goods and services both. So now it is calculated based upon the wholesale price index, that is at the wholesale level and at the consumer level both. What is the meaning of WPI and CPI? That we will discuss in the upcoming discussion. So this is headline inflation. Now what is the second category? The second category is the core inflation, right? So core inflation basically means that we will consider all goods and services excluding the volatile goods and services, and that includes the food items and the energy items. And why we are excluding the food and energy items? Because the food and energy items, they are very volatile in nature. The supply of food is dependent upon the agriculture, and the agriculture is dependent upon the monsoon. So there is a lot of uncertainty in the prices of foods. Similarly, the energy prices are also dependent upon the foreign situation, the global situation. So even the energy prices are very volatile. So we are excluding the food and energy prices from the total inflation, and we want to see that what is the long-term trend if we exclude the most unstable, most uncertain item, right? So that will give us an idea that what is the structural inflation in the country. So it will give more accurate picture to the government. The government can actually focus upon the particular areas which needs to be taken into consideration, right? This core inflation is also called as manufacturing non-food inflation, right? Because this is basically focusing upon the manufacturing, most of the manufacturing items, and it excludes the food, right? So this is headline and this is core inflation. Now the third category is based upon the government intervention. So based upon the government intervention, the first category can be suppressed inflation. Suppressed inflation means when the government has the intervention to control the inflation in the price through the price mechanism. So for example, if the government reduces the petrol prices by giving more and more subsidy so that the prices can remain low, then this will be the kind of government intervention, right? So for example, if the prices of the petrol come to rupees 80 per liter, but the government is giving 40 rupees subsidy per liter so that the prices remain in control and the ultimate price is rupees 40, then this is called suppressed inflation. The second category is the open inflation. So this open inflation will be when there is no government intervention in the price mechanism. So only and only the market forces are deciding the type of inflation, the rate of inflation. So when there is no government intervention, then this is called open inflation, right? Now the last category is based upon the causes of inflation. So based upon the causes of inflation, we have already discussed. One can be the demand pull inflation. This demand pull can be again categorized into monetary and non-monetary. Second can be the cost push inflation. This cost push can again be categorized into increase in the input prices, taxes, and supply shock factors. And last is the structural deficit factors like infrastructure, poor agricultural productivity, etc. Right? So these are the four categories: speed, volatility, government intervention and causes; speed, creeping, walking, running, and hyper or galloping. Creeping inflation is desirable. Volatility, based upon volatility we have headline and core. Based upon government intervention we have suppressed and open, and based upon causes we have demand pull, cost push, and structural deficit inflation. So this is all about the types of inflation. In the next video we will discuss the impacts of inflation on the different stakeholders in the economy. Thank you very much.